The year was 3147. Earth was no longer the gleaming cradle of humanity, but a fractured relic of its former glory. Once the hub of a thriving galactic empire, it now stood as a grim reminder of humanity's hubris. Across the cosmos, human colonies squabbled over resources, trade routes, and political dominance, leaving them vulnerable to external threats. But none were prepared for the Zephyra. They came without warning, silent and calculating, their ships gliding through human space with an eerie elegance. Where the Zephyra struck, no survivors remained. Cities were reduced to ash, orbital stations were hollowed out, and entire planets went dark. The unified governments of old were long gone, leaving fractured military forces to mount feudal defenses. Humanity, scattered and divided, seemed doomed. Captain Aline Kess stood on the bridge of the Solace, a worn but reliable stealth cruiser. She wasn't a hero, at least not anymore. A decorated war veteran turned rogue operative, Kess had spent the last decade taking on missions that others deemed suicidal. She worked alone, a phantom on the edges of legality. Yet today, as she gazed out at the scorched ruins of the colony world Draconis Theta, she felt the cold grip of failure. The Solace hovered above the planet's smoldering surface, scanning for survivors. Nothing, just like the last 3 colonies. Kess exhaled sharply, running a hand through her short-cropped hair. The Zephyra weren't just killing, they were erasing. Every trace of human life, every structure, every record was meticulously wiped out. It was as if they wanted to remove humanity from history itself. Her ship's AI, a clipped but efficient voice named Helios, broke the silence. Captain, I've detected an anomalous energy signature approximately 200 kilometers south of the colony's capital. It doesn't match the Zephyra technology or any known human systems. Kess frowned. Show me. The display flickered, revealing a faint pulse of light amidst the wasteland. The signal was weak, almost imperceptible, but it was there, steady and deliberate. Could be a trap, Helios offered. Could be salvation, Kess muttered, strapping on her gear. The landing was rough, the ashen winds buffeting the Solace as it descended. Kess disembarked into a wasteland of gray and black, her boots crunching against the scorched earth. The beacon's pulse grew stronger as she approached, leading her to a crumbling structure half buried in debris. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the faint hum of the beacon reverberated through the walls. Kess followed it to a chamber lined with shattered consoles. In the center, an ornate pedestal held a device unlike anything she'd seen. It was small and sleek, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Helios, she called, holding up the device. Analyzing, the AI responded. Preliminary scans indicate this artifact is over 4,000 years old. It predates the current human calendar. Kess's brow furrowed. Impossible. No human tech from that era could survive intact. Perhaps it's not entirely human, Helios suggested. Before Kess could respond, the artifact lit up, projecting a holographic image of an ancient insignia, a shield entwined with a wreath of stars. Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized it. The Valoran crest. The stories had always been dismissed as myths. The Valoran bloodline was said to descend from humanity's greatest heroes, their DNA carrying enhancements that had once united and saved humanity during its darkest hour. But those were legends, bedtime stories told to children. The beacon pulsed again, and a voice echoed through the chamber. It was faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. To the Bloodline of Valor, the voice said, "Your time has come again." Kess stared at the device, a mixture of awe and disbelief on her face. The Valoran bloodline wasn't just a myth, it was real, and if the legends were true, it might be the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. She clenched her jaw and turned back toward the Solace. Helios, we've got work to do. The Solace cut through the void, its engines humming softly as Captain Aline Kess studied the artifact on her desk. The holographic projection of the Valoran crest hovered above it, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The weight of its implications gnawed at her. Could the bloodline of Valor truly exist? Could descendants of these ancient heroes, scattered across the stars, be humanity's last hope? Helios interrupted her thoughts. Captain, I've compiled a list of potential candidates based on the genetic markers embedded in the artifact. The results are intriguing. Let's hear it, Kess replied, leaning forward. 4 confirmed individuals, Helios began. All exhibit the unique Valoran signature. Their locations, however, present logistical challenges. 2 are on opposite ends of the galactic core, 1 is in a highly restricted zone, and the 4th is currently imprisoned on the colony of Eridon IX. Perfect, Kess muttered, pinching the bridge of her nose. Nothing worthwhile is ever easy, is it? The nearest candidate is Commander Rin Valoran, Helios continued. Former starship captain, court-martialed for insubordination and discharged from the military. Last known location, Proxima Helios Station. Sounds like a charmer, Kess remarked. He's also the most genetically compatible with the artifact. If the bloodline is to be reawakened, he's the key, Helios added. Kess sighed and set a course for Proxima Helios Station, a lawless trading hub teeming with smugglers, bounty hunters, and fugitives. She wasn't thrilled about diving headfirst into a den of criminals, but time was a luxury they didn't have. Proxima Helios Station loomed ahead, a chaotic hive of activity with mismatched modules and flashing neon signs that advertised everything from illegal weapons to exotic alien cuisine. The docking process was grueling, as station security, if it could be called that, extorted every arriving ship for protection fees. Kess navigated the crowded marketplace, her eyes scanning for Rin. She had little to go on except an old service photo showing a broad-shouldered man with piercing green eyes and a sharp jawline. The years since his disgrace had likely weathered him, but she doubted he'd blend in easily. She found him at a dingy cantina near the station's core, seated at a table littered with empty glasses and gambling chips. His disheveled uniform hinted at better days, but the spark in his eyes remained. Commander Rin Valoran? Kess asked, her tone sharp and commanding. Depends on who's asking, he replied, leaning back lazily. Kess slammed the artifact onto the table. Its crest flickered to life, casting an ethereal glow over the cantina. Conversations hushed, and all eyes turned to the 2 of them. Do I have your attention now? She said, her voice low. Rin's smirk faded as he stared at the glowing crest. He reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing the artifact. It pulsed brighter in response, as though recognizing him. Where did you get this? He demanded, his tone now serious. I need your help, Kess said. Humanity needs your help. The Zephyra are wiping us out, and this, she gestured to the artifact, says you're part of the solution. Rin shook his head, his laugh bitter. You've got the wrong guy. I'm no hero. I couldn't even keep my own crew together. You're a Valoran, Kess shot back. Your bloodline built legends. It's time to stop hiding and live up to it. Before Rin could respond, the cantina doors burst open and a squad of bounty hunters stormed in. There he is, one shouted, pointing at Rin. The bounty on your head just tripled, Valoran. Rin cursed under his breath. Kess drew her sidearm, her expression hardening. Looks like you don't have a choice. The bounty hunters opened fire, and chaos erupted. Tables overturned, patrons screamed, and blaster bolts scorched the air. Kess ducked behind cover, firing precision shots to take down the attackers. Rin joined in, his instincts kicking in as he fought with surprising skill. When the dust settled, the cantina was a wreck, and the surviving bounty hunters fled. Rin looked at Kess, his chest rising and falling with adrenaline. All right, he said finally, I'm in, but if we're doing this, you better tell me everything. Kes nodded. Welcome to the fight. As they left the cantina, the artifact glowed brighter, as if the bloodline was beginning to awaken. The Solace emerged from hyperspace near Sarah Prime, a volcanic moon with a reputation for swallowing anyone foolish enough to tread its surface. Captain Kes stood on the bridge, her arms crossed as she watched molten rivers snake across the moon's surface on the display. Beside her, Rin Valoran scanned the data feed, the glow of the Valoran artifact casting a faint light between them. So, we're here because? Rin asked, skepticism dripping from his tone. The artifact's pulse led us here, Kes replied, her patience fraying. The Codex is supposed to be on this moon. If we want to know how to use this bloodline of yours, we need that information. And if it's another trap? Rin countered. Then we die trying, Kes said, her voice hardening. Because sitting around and waiting for the Zephyra to wipe us out isn't an option. Rin opened his mouth to argue but stopped when Helios spoke. Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures beneath the surface. There's an ancient structure buried within the volcanic crust. It matches the Valoran-era design. Kest shot Rin a triumphant look. See? Not a trap. Yet, Rin muttered, following her to the ship's lower deck. The shuttle ride to the surface was tense. Rin, now fully armed and armored, watched Kes pilot them toward a jagged outcropping. The atmosphere was thick with ash, the skies churning with violent storms. Every so often, the ground rumbled as distant eruptions spewed rivers of magma across the barren landscape. As they landed, Rin scanned their surroundings, his instincts on edge. I've seen moons like this before. They're death traps. Good thing you're here, then, Kes quipped, grabbing the artifact. They trekked toward the energy signature, navigating treacherous terrain littered with razor-sharp rocks and boiling geysers. The heat was suffocating, and every step felt like a gamble. Finally, they reached the entrance to the structure, a massive metal door, half buried in volcanic debris. Ancient inscriptions, worn but still legible, were carved into the surface. Kes handed the artifact to Rin. Your bloodline, your turn. Rin hesitated but stepped forward, pressing the artifact against the door. It pulsed, sending waves of light across the inscriptions. Slowly, the door groaned and slid open, revealing a dark corridor descending into the moon's depths. Well, Rin said, forcing a grin, at least it didn't explode. Inside, the air was cool and still, a stark contrast to the inferno outside. The walls were lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly as the artifact guided their path. At the end of the corridor, they entered a vast chamber dominated by a pedestal. Atop it sat the Codex, a cylindrical device etched with intricate designs. Rin approached cautiously. This better not be cursed. The moment he touched it, the Codex activated, projecting a massive holographic map. It depicted the galaxy, with markers pinpointing key locations. Alongside the map were flashes of text, tactical data, and encrypted messages. Helios's voice crackled over their comms. This data is extraordinary. It appears to be a repository of Valoran knowledge, strategies, genetic blueprints, and coordinates to the Forge. The Forge? Rin asked, stepping back. A legendary Valoran facility, Kes explained, her eyes fixed on the map. It's where your ancestors developed their enhancements. If it still exists, it could unlock the potential of your bloodline. Before they could celebrate, the ground shook violently. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the chamber, followed by a series of distant explosions. Captain, Helios warned, a Zephyra strike team has entered the atmosphere. They've locked onto your location. Kes and Rin exchanged a grim look. Guess the Zephyra don't want us finding this, Rin said, drawing his weapon. The chamber's walls began to shift as defense mechanisms activated. Kes grabbed the Codex and shouted, "Run!" They sprinted back through the corridor as automated turrets and collapsing debris turned the escape into a deadly obstacle course. Outside, the Zephyra descended in sleek, black ships, their soldiers moving with terrifying precision. Rin and Kes fought their way to the shuttle, their movements coordinated and instinctive. For the first time, Kes saw a spark of leadership in Rin, his bloodline beginning to assert itself. As they launched into the chaotic sky, dodging Zephyra fire, Kes clutched the codex tightly. It wasn't just knowledge, it was hope. "We've got what we came for," she said through gritted teeth. "Now we figure out how to use it before the Zephyra do." Rin glanced back at the burning moon, his expression dark. If this is what they're willing to kill for, we're going to need more than just hope. The Solace streaked through hyperspace, its engines straining as it pushed toward the coordinates revealed by the codex. Kes sat in the captain's chair, the codex securely mounted on the console before her. Its holographic projections shifted constantly, maps, star charts, and cryptic instructions filling the air like ghostly constellations. Rin Valoran leaned over the console, his brow furrowed. "This thing expects us to interpret a 1,000-year-old language like its common galactic standard. Half of these symbols don't even make sense." Helios chimed in, its tone brisk. "I am translating as we speak. However, certain nuances appear to be locked behind an additional layer of encryption, one tied to the artifact and Mr. Valoran's genetic markers." "Of course it is," Rin muttered. Kes shot him a glance. "Look, if you're going to whine, do it somewhere else. Right now, this codex is the only edge we have against the Zephyra. So start acting like the leader your bloodline says you're supposed to be." Rin scowled but said nothing, choosing instead to focus on deciphering the swirling glyphs. Hours later, the Solace dropped out of hyperspace, revealing a barren system bathed in the pale light of a dying star. At its center loomed a massive construct, a ring-like megastructure orbiting a small rocky planet. "The Forge." Kes whistled low. "It's real. I didn't think it would be, but it's real." The Forge was ancient yet remarkably intact. Its surface was a patchwork of metallic plates, glowing conduits, and enormous docking bays, many of which appeared to be inactive. The structure pulsed faintly, as though it were alive but dormant. Helios's voice cut through their awe. "Preliminary scans indicate the Forge is powered down. However, its systems remain functional. The codex appears to be the activation key." "Let's hope it's as cooperative as you," Kes said, steering the Solace toward an open docking port. Inside, the Forge was a labyrinth of towering corridors and cavernous chambers. Lights flickered as the codex began interacting with the ancient systems, bringing parts of the structure to life. Kes and Rin moved cautiously, weapons at the ready. The deeper they ventured, the more the Forge seemed to react to Rin's presence. Panels lit up as he passed, and a soft hum filled the air. It was as though the Forge recognized him, responding to his bloodline's latent connection. "It's like it knows me," Rin murmured, his unease growing with each step. "That's the point," Kes replied. "Your ancestors built this place. Whatever's in here, it was made for you." Finally, they reached the central chamber. A massive platform dominated the space, surrounded by intricate machinery that pulsed faintly. The codex fit perfectly into a pedestal at the platform's center. When Rin placed the artifact into the pedestal, the Forge awakened fully. Lights flared, conduits glowed, and a deep vibration coursed through the structure. A holographic figure appeared, a woman clad in ornate armor, her features regal and commanding. "Welcome, Scion of Valor," the figure said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You have come to claim the legacy of your ancestors." Rin stepped forward hesitantly. "Who are you?" "I am the custodian of the Forge," she replied. "This facility was created to ensure humanity's survival in the face of annihilation. Your bloodline carries the genetic potential to awaken and wield the tools stored here. The question is, are you ready to bear that responsibility?" Before Rin could answer, alarms blared throughout the Forge. The hologram turned sharply. Zephyra forces have breached the perimeter, the custodian announced. They seek to destroy this facility and end the Valoran bloodline once and for all. Kes cursed under her breath. They must have tracked us. Helios, how long until they reach us? 10 minutes, perhaps less, the AI responded. The custodian faced Rin. To unlock the forge's full potential, you must undergo the activation process. But it will take time, and it is not without risk. Risk? Rin asked. Your body must adapt to the enhancements. Failure could result in death. Kes grabbed Rin by the arm. You don't have to do this. We'll find another way. Rin looked at her, then at the custodian. The Zephyra were coming. Humanity was running out of time. No, he said firmly. If this is the only way to stop them, then I have to try. The custodian nodded. Step onto the platform. As Rin moved into position, Kes readied her weapons. The chamber's doors shuddered as the Zephyra closed in. Helios, Kes barked, lock down every entry point and prepare the ship for immediate departure. We're not dying here. The forge roared to life as Rin began the activation process. Energy surged around him, and the room trembled with power. Rin stood on the platform, his body encased in a swirling vortex of energy. The forge's machinery roared around him, conduits glowing brighter as the activation process reached its peak. Pain lanced through his body, an electric storm that felt like it was tearing him apart. He clenched his teeth, refusing to scream, though the agony threatened to overwhelm him. The custodian's holographic form hovered nearby, her expression impassive but her tone urgent. You must endure. The enhancements are rewriting your biology, awakening dormant potential within your bloodline. If you falter now, the process will fail. I'm not giving up, Rin growled through the pain, his hands balled into fists. Meanwhile, Kes crouched near the chamber's entrance, her blaster rifle trained on the door. The Zephyra were close now. She could feel the vibrations of their assault reverberating through the forge. Helios's voice crackled in her earpiece. Captain, they're breaching the outer corridors. I've rerouted auxiliary power to lock the main gates, but that will only delay them. Buy us as much time as you can, Kes snapped. She glanced back at Rin, his figure barely visible within the storm of energy. Rin, you'd better finish this fast. We've got company. The chamber's doors shook violently, buckling under the weight of the Zephyra assault. Seconds later, they exploded inward, revealing a squad of armored Zephyra soldiers. Their sleek black exosuits reflected the glow of the forge, and their movements were unnervingly precise. Kes opened fire immediately, her shots taking down the first two soldiers before they could react. The remaining Zephyra spread out, returning fire with weapons that crackled with purple energy. Bolts sizzled past Kes as she ducked behind cover, returning fire with ruthless efficiency. Helios, where's my support? She barked. I've activated automated defense systems in adjacent corridors, but their numbers are overwhelming, the AI responded. Reinforcements will breach this chamber within minutes. No kidding, Kes muttered, taking down another soldier. Suddenly, the storm around Rin intensified, and a blinding flash of light filled the chamber. Kes shielded her eyes, momentarily disoriented. When the light faded, she turned to see Rin standing on the platform, transformed. His armor was gone, replaced by an organic, crystalline shell that pulsed with inner light. His eyes glowed faintly, and arcs of energy danced across his skin. He looked at his hands, flexing them as though testing newfound strength. What the hell? Kes whispered, equal parts awed and terrified. The custodian's hologram spoke, her voice steady. The activation is complete. The Scion of Valor has awakened. The Zephyra soldiers hesitated, their weapons momentarily lowering as they took in Rin's transformed appearance. That hesitation cost them dearly. Rin leaped from the platform with inhuman speed, landing in the midst of the enemy squad. His movements were fluid and precise, as though he had trained for this moment his entire life. He disarmed one soldier with a single blow, his enhanced strength shattering their weapon. Another he incapacitated with a burst of energy from his hands, the force sending them flying across the chamber. Kes watched in stunned silence as Rin tore through the Zephyra with an ease that bordered on terrifying. Where moments ago he had been a reluctant participant, now he was a force of nature, every action imbued with purpose. More Zephyra soldiers poured into the chamber, but Rin met them head-on. His crystalline armor absorbed their energy blasts, redirecting them back in powerful bursts that tore through their ranks. The chamber was a symphony of chaos, blaster fire, the hum of the forge, and the shouts of dying enemies. When the final soldier fell, Rin turned to Kes, his glowing eyes meeting hers. "It's done. The forge awakened me, but this is just the beginning." Before Kes could respond, the custodian interrupted. "The Zephyra's main force will arrive soon. You must leave. Take the codex and the knowledge you have gained to the next coordinates." "What next coordinates?" Kes demanded, her adrenaline still spiking. The custodian pointed toward the map projected from the codex. The Valorant Council had contingencies. The next facility holds the means to unite the remaining bloodlines and complete the weapon needed to defeat the Zephyra. Rin stepped forward, his voice steady. "Then we go, but this time, we take the fight to them." Kes nodded, her respect for Rin growing. Let's hope the forge made the right choice. As the Solace departed the forge, its engines roaring, the dormant megastructure fell silent once more. In the distance, Zephyra ships swarmed, too late to stop the newly awakened scion of Valor and his determined crew. The Solace zipped through the vastness of space, the stars streaking by as it made its way toward the next set of coordinates from the codex. Rin stood by the viewport, his hand resting on the cold metal as he gazed out at the endless expanse. The power coursing through him felt like a living thing, alive, hungry, and relentless. He could sense every shift in the fabric of reality around him, his mind expanding with every new thought, every new spark of energy. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was something else, something far greater. Kes stepped up beside him, her expression unreadable, still adjusting. Rin exhaled slowly, feeling the raw energy in his veins. "I don't know if I'll ever fully adjust, but I'm learning to control it." He glanced over at her. "It's different than anything I've ever felt. I don't just sense things. I know them before they happen. I can see the future." "You're not supposed to be able to do that," Kes said, frowning. "I wasn't supposed to have this power at all," Rin replied. "But I do, and if we're going to survive, I need to understand how to use it." Kes nodded, but she wasn't entirely convinced. She had seen firsthand what kind of power Rin was wielding. It wasn't just strength or speed, it was an evolution, a weapon as much as it was a gift. Helios's voice crackled through the comms, breaking the tension. "Captain, we're approaching the next destination. A remote planet in the nebula Verge. Scans indicate an abandoned research facility in orbit. It matches the coordinates provided by the Codex." Kes's eyes narrowed. "Let's hope it's more than just a research facility. Rin, you ready for this?" Rin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to face her, his eyes glowing faintly with an unnatural intensity. "I'll be ready, but the Zephyra are going to be following us. We can't keep running forever. It's time we stopped being hunted." Kes's expression softened. She knew what he meant. They couldn't continue reacting to the Zephyra's every move. They needed to take control before the entire galaxy fell to the invading force. "Let's make it count," Kes said. The Solace entered the atmosphere of the planet, descending toward the abandoned facility's landing bay. The planet was a frozen wasteland, its surface blanketed in snow and ice, with jagged mountains that tore through the bleak landscape. The facility's orbiting station loomed overhead, a stark silhouette against the bruised sky. As they disembarked, Rin's heightened senses were on high alert. He felt the pulse of the planet beneath his feet, the hum of long-forgotten machines stirring in the frozen depths. There was something here, something important. He just didn't know what. They entered the research facility, its corridors eerily silent, as though the place had been abandoned for centuries. Dust covered every surface, and the air smelled faintly of decay. But Rin could feel it, the residue of something ancient. He ran a hand over the cold metal walls, the touch sending a ripple through the energy surrounding him. "I've never been a fan of places like this," Kes muttered, her eyes scanning the shadows. Dead, quiet, and hiding too many secrets. Helios's voice came through their comms again. "Scans show several anomalies deep within the facility. There appears to be a hidden sublevel, possibly a lab or storage facility. The data seems to be encrypted." Rin stopped in his tracks, his eyes flicking to Kes. "Encrypted? Like the Codex?" "Exactly," Kes replied, her voice grim. "We've dealt with encrypted knowledge before. Let's hope we don't have to fight through another dozens of Farah to crack it." They continued deeper into the facility, navigating the winding corridors until they found a secure door at the far end. It was larger than the others, reinforced with a network of old, rusted security systems. The moment they approached, a series of flashing red lights began to pulse, warning them to stay back. "This is it," Rin said, stepping forward. "The place we're looking for. I can feel it." Kes glanced at him, then back at the door. "All right then, let's see what's behind it." Rin stepped up to the terminal and placed his palm on the cold surface. Instantly, his enhanced abilities kicked in. His mind reached out, feeling the layers of encryption, the complex codes and firewalls meant to keep intruders out. He could sense the exact moment they began to unravel. As the last firewall cracked open, the door hissed open with a low rumble, revealing a large chamber. Inside were rows of stasis pods, most of them empty, but some still contained faintly glowing figures. "These are..." Kes's voice trailed off, her eyes wide. Rin stepped inside, his gaze locked on the pods. Clones, soldiers. He turned to Kes, his face hardening. They were creating an army here, a new generation of warriors. But for what purpose? Before Kes could answer, the lights flickered and the hum of a power core came to life. The door slammed shut behind them. "They know we're here," Kes muttered. Rin's eyes flared with renewed determination. "Then it's time to fight back." The door sealed shut behind them with a heavy metallic clang, plunging the chamber into a tense silence. The stasis pods flickered to life, their internal systems beginning to hum as dormant machinery powered up. The air was thick with the faint scent of preserved cryogenic fluids. For a moment, Rin and Kes just stood there, the weight of the discovery pressing in on them. Rows upon rows of pods filled the chamber, each one housing a soldier, their forms preserved in the midst of a deep freeze. Their faces were obscured, but Rin could sense them, his connection to the forge thrumming with the dormant power contained within. These soldiers were not merely genetic experiments. They were an army, waiting for someone to unlock their potential. "They were preparing for a war," Kes murmured, her hand resting on her weapon as she scanned the room. "And we just walked right into it." Rin's gaze swept over the pods. "An army of the past, but they're more than just soldiers. They're my bloodline's legacy. This facility, these experiments, they were meant to create the perfect warriors, and now they're waking up." A loud mechanical groan echoed from the far end of the room. A pod hissed open, releasing a cloud of vapor as the occupant inside began to stir. The soldier within slowly sat up, their eyes snapping open with an eerie precision. The figure stepped out, their movements sharp and coordinated, as if they had been trained for battle from the moment of their conception. "Did you really think you could invade our home?" The soldier's voice was cold, devoid of emotion, but Rin could sense the fight boiling just beneath the surface. Kes stepped forward, her hand tightening on her blaster. "Who are you?" "I am one of the Valorborn," the soldier replied, their eyes scanning Rin as though assessing him. "You've awakened the legacy, Scion. What are you going to do with it?" Rin felt the weight of the question, as if the room itself was holding its breath. The Valorborn, the soldiers of his bloodline, his ancestors. They had been engineered to be unstoppable, and they were now fully awake, ready to follow his lead. But what would that mean? Could he control them, or would he become just another puppet in their long-forgotten war? "We don't want trouble," Kes said, her voice steady but wary. "We're here to stop the Zephyra, not stir up an ancient war." The Valorborn soldier tilted their head. "The Zephyra? They have been a threat for millennia. But they are not our primary concern. We fight for survival, our survival, for the bloodline to continue." Rin clenched his fists. The thought of using these warriors, these soldiers of the past, weighed heavily on him. But he had no choice. "Then help us fight the Zephyra. You don't have to fight for the old wars. Help us fight for humanity's future." The Valorborn's expression softened, just slightly. "You speak with the voice of a true leader, Scion. Perhaps this war is not ours to finish. But we will fight beside you, for the bloodline, and for the future you seek to build." Just then, the hum of machinery intensified as more pods began to open. One after another, the Valorborn soldiers emerged, perfectly coordinated, silently assessing their surroundings. There were dozens of them, each one more formidable than the last. Their movements were fluid, their instincts sharpened to a deadly precision. Kes watched them, her eyes narrowing. "Looks like we have an army of our own now. Let's hope they're ready for the real fight." As the last of the Valorborn soldiers stepped forward, the ground shook, a tremor passing through the facility. The walls rumbled as an emergency alarm blared, signaling an incoming breach. "They found us," Rin said, his voice low and tense. The soldiers immediately fell into formation, weapons materializing in their hands with a swift, practiced motion. Rin could feel the power building within him, the energy coursing through his veins as he prepared to lead them into battle. Kes turned to him. "We're outnumbered. We'll need all the firepower we can get." Rin nodded. "Then we'll give them everything we've got." As the doors to the chamber burst open, a swarm of Zephyra soldiers flooded in, their alien forms charging forward with ruthless efficiency. They had finally tracked Rin and the Solace to this facility, and they were here to finish what they had started. But this time, Rin wasn't going to run. This time, he had an army of his own, one born of his bloodline, forged in the crucible of war. The Valorborn would fight, and together, they would take the battle to the Zephyra. With a roar, Rin charged forward, the Valorborn at his side. The battle had only just begun. The Zephyra forces stormed into the chamber, their alien war cries filling the air as their advanced weaponry pulsed with deadly energy. But Rin stood at the forefront, his eyes blazing with determination, the Valorborn arrayed around him, their crystalline armor gleaming in the harsh light of the facility. For a moment, both sides paused, two forces of untold power, locked in a deadly standoff. The Valorborn soldiers, genetically engineered to be the perfect warriors, moved like a single organism, their eyes reflecting the silent understanding that they were now fighting for something greater than their creators had intended. They were fighting for humanity's future. Rin's voice cut through the tension, loud and commanding. For humanity, for the future. With a synchronized roar, the Valorborn charged. The Zephyra fired first, their energy blasts streaking across the room, but Rin's newfound powers allowed him to anticipate their movements. He raised his hand, deflecting the incoming shots with a pulse of energy that rippled through the air like a force field. He charged into the fray with the speed and grace of a predator. His enhanced abilities allowed him to see his enemies' movements before they even made them, and his every strike landed with deadly precision. He cut through Zephyra soldiers like a whirlwind, his glowing fists shattering armor and bones alike. The Valorborn followed, their weapons crackling with energy as they tore into the Zephyra ranks, moving in flawless formation. Each soldier was a weapon of perfect destruction, striking, countering, and overwhelming the enemy in waves of force. Kes stood back, providing cover fire from the periphery as she watched Rin lead the charge. She had seen him grow since they'd first met. Once a reluctant hero, now a scion of unimaginable power. She couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and pride as she witnessed him fully embrace his destiny. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was leading an army to forge a new era. But even with the Valorborn at his side, the Zephyra were relentless. More of them poured into the chamber, their numbers swelling. The sheer volume of enemy soldiers seemed overwhelming, and for a brief moment, Rin felt the weight of it all. "This isn't enough," he muttered, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "We need more power, more strength." The custodian's voice echoed in his mind, calm and measured. "The Codex has more to offer, Scion. You must reach it. You must unlock the final key to your true potential." Rin's heart pounded. The Codex, the key to humanity's salvation. He could feel it, deep within his bones. But he knew it wasn't just about power anymore. It was about unity, about bringing together the forces of humanity to stand against the Zephyra. The Valorborn were his legacy, but they were not the only ones who could fight for this future. With renewed resolve, Rin raised his hands high, and a surge of energy erupted from him, tearing through the Zephyra like a shockwave. The force was so intense that the entire facility seemed to tremble. The Valorborn surged forward, emboldened by Rin's display of power, and the Zephyra faltered, their lines breaking under the onslaught. But then a new presence emerged, a towering figure in the back of the room, dark and imposing, covered in black armor that absorbed the light around it. The Zephyra's leader had arrived. "Scion," the leader's voice was cold, resonating with an unnatural power. "You may have awakened the bloodline, but you cannot stop the inevitable. The Zephyra will dominate this galaxy, and nothing you do can change that." Rin met the leader's gaze, the weight of his words pressing in. "The inevitable," Rin said, his voice steady, "is what we make of it. And I say this, humanity will never bow to you. We will fight until the end." The leader smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Then let us see if your resolve is enough to save you." With a roar, the Zephyra leader unleashed a blast of energy so powerful that it ripped through the room, sending debris flying and shaking the very foundation of the facility. The Valorborn were knocked back, but they quickly regrouped, their unyielding determination driving them forward. Rin, however, was not so easily deterred. He raised his hands, channeling the full force of the Codex and the power that had awakened within him. A radiant explosion of energy erupted from him, colliding with the Zephyra leader's attack, creating a blinding flash of light that consumed the entire chamber. When the light faded, the Zephyra leader was on his knees, blood dripping from his broken form. The battle was won, but Rin knew this was only the beginning. There would be more battles to fight, more challenges to overcome. But for now, humanity had a chance. The Bloodline of Valor had forged a new era, and they would fight together. The galaxy had been changed forever. Rin turned to the Valorborn, their eyes filled with unspoken understanding. "This is just the start. Let's make sure the future we fight for is one we can protect." And with that, they stepped out into the unknown, ready for whatever came next.